It's serious business playing in the national airspace system, and we need to make sure that we're building robust vehicles that have many redundancies and safeguards in them, as well as ensuring that we're maintaining and inspecting them properly.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 296. Where do commercial UAS operators go for service and repair? According to today's guest, they can go to more than 200 authorized service centers worldwide. Andy Osantowske is Director of Operations for Robotic Skies, the only global network of certified UAS maintenance centers. Robotic Skies offers comprehensive turnkey field service programs designed to keep UAS flying safely, efficiently, and affordably around the world. Founded in 2014, the company has more than 200 independently owned and operated repair stations in more than 40 countries. The network provides maintenance, repair, operations, and support services for commercial UAS. Before joining Robotic Skies, Andy gained experience in the integration of UAS into the national airspace, first as a subject matter expert on air traffic for Evans Incorporated, a contractor to the FAA, then as a member of the FAA's Air Traffic Organization team that worked on the Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability, or LANC for Part 107 operations. He holds a private pilot license, a remote pilot license, and an aircraft dispatcher license. Andy introduced us to Robotic Skies more than a year ago in a Drone Radio Show podcast. Today he returns to give us an update on the company's UAS maintenance and repair service, some interesting partnerships, and an outlook on the UAS service sector. But before we hear from Andy, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have an idea for a great show and want to share your experience, please contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's find out where UAS operators go for service and repair with Andy Osantowske of Robotic Skies. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Andy to introduce himself.
My name is Andy Osantowske. I'm the Director of Operations for Robotic Skies.
Thanks, Andy. For those that don't know, what is Robotic Skies?
Robotic Skies is really the first and the only worldwide network of service centers focusing on maintenance for commercial, enterprise, and many sophisticated unmanned aircraft systems.
What type of UAS systems does the company primarily service?
It comes down to when the economics make sense to repair a vehicle that is damaged or is sophisticated in a way that requires some heavy experienced technicians or, maybe more than a basic set of hand tools. And or when the regulatory construct kind of catches up with some of the exemptions and programs that are out there right now that will then require traditional aviation grade maintenance programs. So, generally consumer grade, things that are easily replaced, we generally don't service, but it's those where you have a significant investment where you want to protect your investment is where we come into play.
And the way it works, as I understand it, is that the repair centers are distributed around the world, and people either send or take their drone to the nearest repair center when they need it.
We're still kind of early stage setting up this network, but in very short order, that is the goal where an operator would be able to get onto what would be our marketplace and coordinate the service repair of their vehicle, identify a station that would be nearby to drop the vehicle off at, and then the technicians that are there who are existing manned aviation technicians that are working in certificated FAA or equivalent certificated repair stations would perform that work and conduct all the appropriate inspections and sign-offs and whatnot. and then return the vehicle back to the operator. The operator really truthfully will only interface with us, Robotic Skies, through the marketplace. So all of the billing and the order and status track and everything will be through our system. They wouldn't necessarily be interfacing all that much with the individual technician or repair station.
Are you able to talk about how large the network is today?
I can give you a general sense. We have over 200 stations across, I think we're over 40 countries across the globe, and that is expanding pretty much every day. And as I mentioned earlier, these stations are either FAA certificated Part 145 repair stations that are currently operating as manned aviation maintenance facilities, or the civil equivalent if they're abroad. If you were to look at, say, a hot spot of where most of our facilities are located currently, today's picture, U.S., of course, many in Europe, and quite a bit in South America as well as the Southern Pacific.
Do you serve only commercial clients, or do you also serve the military?
The short answer is yes. We do work with a number of different manufacturers and their operating customers, and that can include government and or defense vehicles. A good example of that here recently is our press release announcing our partnership with Aerovironment, which is a large Department of Defense vehicle supplier. So that would be, I guess, the most notable example of some of the spaces that we're in right now.
About a year ago, we talked, and it was about the same time that Boeing took a financial interest in the company. Can you tell us about it? How long has the company been in operation?
We were founded back in 2014 by our CEO and founder, Brad Hayden. Really got going beginning part of last year when we announced a investment led by Boeing. Boeing provided some initial capital for us to take this concept and develop it a little bit further into an actual operational company. You know, they have what's called their Horizon X portfolio, where they have many different unmanned system focused companies that they invest in. I couldn't tell you the exact count of how many. I know there's more than 10, but less than 100. But there are quite a bit of notable industry kind of leaders that are also in this Horizon X portfolio. And what we look at when we look at the total kind of company makeup or the capabilities makeup across that portfolio is you see almost an entire ecosystem Boeing has engaged with, you know, ranging from operations, manufacturers, software providers, and including us in the maintenance aspect. And for us, we take that as a validation as maintenance will be a key enabler for many complex operations as this industry evolves. And we see the investment by Boeing and many others during that round as a good sign that we're heading in the right direction and we're creating a solution for a need that's coming up as we speak.
In your opinion, what are some of the reasons why Robotic Skies stands out in the UAS service sector?
I think first and foremost is our global presence. Going out and recruiting and bringing in existing manned aviation facilities to our network and bringing them under that umbrella, I think is a huge, I would say, huge driver. Mainly because it ensures some consistency. These operators today operating unmanned aircraft tend to be a little bit more mobile than you would say with a traditional manned aircraft. And, you know, that may or may not make a ton of sense, you know, at least on the surface. But, you know, when we consider a lot of these folks or a lot of operators can throw their vehicle, even large complex ones, in the back of a pickup truck or a trailer and drive out in the middle of a cornfield away from an airport, that presents challenges for logistics and servicing. So having a wide area network of many different stations widely dispersed across not just the US, but the globe offers the ability to obtain and receive service either nearby, or maybe that shop could service you at your location if you're not able to transport your vehicle in short order. Whereas, sure, there are other existing MRO facilities that have multiple locations, but they might have 10 or 15. They don't have 200 plus. So I think that's probably one key point. Then on top of that, we build this marketplace that leverages that entire network where there's one point of contact for the operator to interface with, and it's us. Regardless if they're flying in Oregon, Florida, or South Africa, we can support them the same way at each different location through our marketplace.
You mentioned the partnership with Aerovironment. How did that partnership come about, and how does it benefit both companies? You know,
the partnership really started specifically with a company, Pulse Aerospace. a handful of years back, and Aerovironment acquired Pulse not too long ago. And we've been working with Pulse on some level in very early stage development in building a support program around their vapor platforms. And since the acquisition by Aerovironment and some of the work that has continued, since then as a carryover from legacy Pulse employees that are now with Aerovironment, that they started to see the potential in having a kind of a third-party partner providing the support model to their customers across the U.S., across the globe, primarily commercial, a lot of commercial customers that exist today, as well as, there could be some growth into some other areas that they sell into. But they see the benefit of having a very agile and quick kind of response third-party supplier that could help them service their vehicles that are out in the fleet and maintain that high level of customer service that they really strive for. And that's one thing that we really like to say too is, we're not just a maintenance program for Aerovironment or any other of our manufacturers. We're also very much a customer service touch point for them to ensure that their vehicles are flying as they should when they were manufactured out the door.
It sounds like Robotic Skies establishes linkages with manufacturers at the start, which then leads into being able to service their products down the road, as opposed to just being a service center that people or companies just go to. Is that part of an overall strategy?
Yeah, it is. And the reason for that is we strive to be trained and, in a way, certified by the manufacturer themselves. And that's an important step in our model, because having that blessing by the manufacturer to service their vehicles, to be trained by them, coupled with our manned aviation pedigree and methodologies, and ensures a high level of quality. It ensures that we're providing high quality service because we have been trained by the factory. We understand not just the construction of the vehicle and how it's put together and how the different components are screwed into place or glued or whatever the fastener may be, but we also understand the methodology of the designers, the architecture of the engineers. We have the ability to kind of extract a lot of the local knowledge that exists maybe within the shop, but may not be on the manuals, that will ultimately make the service, the inspection, and the repairs of these vehicles that much better and ensure that much higher quality of service. And, ultimately it keeps their vehicles in the air longer, which makes their operators happy, which then turns into more sales for them.
I also read an article about a partnership with Intelligent Energy, which produces power systems. How does that fit into the company's overall mission?
Intelligent Energy is a fantastic company. They've been in hydrogen fuel cells for a while. Now they're looking to enter into the unmanned aircraft space because they see some of the potential there, which, we all know that in the unmanned aircraft space, batteries are some of the biggest limiters of flight time, or really is the biggest limiter of flight time. So having a compact energy source that can extend operational limits is in some cases the holy grail of the industry. Where the Intelligent Energy partnership is intriguing is, while they're simple in design and operation, there is some complex aspects to servicing those modules, and utilizing us and our repair station network, which to be an FAA certificated repair station means you have a quality management system, among other things, but that's one of the key cornerstones. So being able to replicate a level of quality across our entire network and across that many stations is attractive to a company like Intelligent Energy, who needs a very specific procedure or servicing procedure done on their modules, and we can replicate that across the globe.
Does Robotic Skies own the service centers, or are they owned independently?
Yeah, it would be more of the latter. So anyone in our network right now is currently independently owned and operated manned aviation maintenance facility. Some are, single location type of operations. Others are large, multi-location, regional, or even national or international MRO operators. The baseline is that they are a 145 or certificated repair station or the equivalent. And I say baseline because that is one of our absolute and hard requirements, because again, it ensures a certain level of quality for the entity. The shop is certified, not an individual. So with the shop being certified, then we can have some level of confidence they're going to perform work to a certain level. What we do after the fact at that point, or from that point, is we layer on top the unmanned system space. So any of the specific training needed for individual vehicles or components, tooling, manuals, any of the other support pieces they need, we provide to the service center up to and including training on individual vehicles. So that if an operator says, I have a new requirement to operate in a new area, we can quickly turn around and go to one of our service centers and enable them very quickly. Because we know we're already starting not from zero, but we're starting from a much further advanced position that we only have to build on top of, not create from scratch.
A certified 145 repair center, is that for avionics or aviation? What does it specifically mean?
So they're all Part 145 certificated repair stations. Almost all of them, I believe all of them, are carrying the appropriate ratings for basically avionics shops. They'll have a smattering of ratings that kind of contribute to what an avionics shop is. But we chose avionics shops and some of the most reputable avionics MRO facilities, primarily because, unmanned aircraft today in their current form are largely flying computers, right? So we need groups that are great with circuitry, electronics, and things that kind of go into the UAS space. A sheet metal shop, while certainly there's pieces or elements of that type of work we'll need, may not be the best equipped or tooled to work on unmanned aircraft. So that's why we targeted avionics shops for the most part.
Yeah, and obviously it's a benefit for the shops.
Yeah, absolutely. It allows them to enter into or tap into a new revenue stream without much initial investment or really that much level of effort. We like to be turnkey for the operator, the manufacturer, as well as our service centers.
What are some of the challenges for the company in growing the business further?
I think we talked last year, there was a good sense that the regulatory framework was advancing at a pretty good pace. And, now thinking back on that initial kind of thought and where we are today, I think the regulations have moved a little bit slower than we anticipated. And not just because of, our current COVID situation. I think there's been a bit of a break tap across the board. A lot of that has to do with, I think, remote ID that's, eagerly anticipated to be published by the end of this year. And even then, there's going to be a ramp up time for that to come to full fruition. And because of, some of the other prohibitions on other rulemaking and the expansion of rulemaking that have been largely, hinged on this remote ID activity. So that's definitely been frustrating because we see we anticipate there's going to be a requirement for regulated maintenance for certain complex operations. And we built a network to address that from day one. There's no real recreating the wheel when it comes to the maintenance space in that regard. Whenever that requirement hits the books, we're ready to address that need today. Now, in the short term, it's, again, too, with COVID, is a lot of individuals haven't been doing as much flying as they were, say, prior to a lot of the shutdown and other restrictions. So smaller amount of hours equates to less maintenance requirements and less inspections and things of that nature. So, just as everybody saw across the board in pretty much every industry, there's been some general slowdown of activity. And we're starting to see an uptick, which is good, but it's definitely a little bit slower than we had hoped.
What sort of opportunities does the company see in serving the package delivery industry?
We see quite a few, primarily when we look at what the regulatory enablers are for package delivery that we've seen in the news over the last year, where some of the larger companies have been issued Part 135 on-demand air carrier certificates to perform that sort of operation. And the FAA has made it pretty clear that that's going to be the path moving forward for quite some time. They may do some other stuff down the road, but at least right now, that's where we're at. And with that level of regulatory sophistication comes many different requirements, one of which that we have not seen any real bending by the FAA through exemptions or relief or any of that is maintenance. They're firmly saying that maintenance is going to be a requirement and it's going to be on the level of what we've seen in traditional aviation. So for us, we're well positioned, having the network that we have with the certificated repair stations and technicians that are in our network to address those needs from day one for any of these commercial operators or as well the vehicle manufacturers. There's also many of the manufacturers are starting to go after type certification and we're eagerly anticipating some of the first type certificates here within the next few months. So the idea that we're going to have type certificated aircraft with airworthiness certificates, the same that you would see in general aviation aircraft or air carrier aircraft, our repair station network is, again, just ready to serve and maintain those vehicles today without any other special approvals or requirements needed. We built the network to address that segment of the market from day one as soon as they're ready to go.
Is Robotic Skies actively working with delivery companies now?
A couple that we have announced publicly, two manufacturers that are in the package delivery space are Matternet and Skyports, and those are just two to name a few that are there today. There are a few others that are emerging into the space that we've had some talks with, but those are our two publicly announced at the moment, and I'm sure we'll be talking to many more as the industry matures and the FAA issues more certificates, either type certs or operating certificates.
Are the type of vehicles that are being used in the air mobility sector also something that Robotic Skies would service, or is it a completely different vehicle?
No, actually, no. I would argue it's the same type of vehicle, just on a larger scale. They are still air vehicles or aircraft that are going to require some level of maintenance and servicing. And again, our network, because we built it on the foundation of manned aviation maintenance facilities or repair stations, is set up and ready to address those activities and concerns today. If we were just to snap our fingers and we'd magically have a urban air taxi by whoever one of the leading manufacturers may be show up at an airport, conceivably we can work on that from day one. Today is what I'm saying. So yeah, we definitely are keeping an eye on UAM, and we are, as a company, engaged in various urban air mobility. We are engaged in those activities and those discussions as well, both on a standards front, but also on a regulatory and on a manufacturer front.
So what's next for Robotic Skies?
As some of these current operations that are limited in their location, maybe a single location or two or three, start to expand, I would certainly hope to see an expansion in our services and more of a public presence as to our efforts and growing this industry and pushing some of these advanced operations forward. Additionally, I think we're working real hard to provide that public-facing marketplace for our operators. So any one of the owners of a complex or a sophisticated vehicle that's currently in our manufacturing network could engage in our marketplace and start to utilize the full scope of our network across the globe. That's something we're working real hard to bring to the public. And I think lastly is just continuing on building our manufacturer base as well as our operator base, working with more and more manufacturers on a daily basis, constantly getting inquiries and phone calls on how can Robotic Skies help us. And we're certainly there to pick up the phone and have a discussion and show the true breadth of the services we can provide across the globe.
Did the COVID pandemic create a little drag on the company's momentum?
It did. It definitely did. I mean, across the board, especially when we work with a lot of manufacturers, the initial supply chain dried up fairly quickly there early on because so many parts are coming in from overseas that a lot of manufacturers had to take a multiple months long kind of break. And that definitely stalled many of our efforts, lasting really throughout middle summer. And towards the end of the summer, we started to see some of the activities and efforts that we were pursuing and making headway on earlier in the year pick back up.
How do manufacturers and other business entities see things now?
I think everybody's, we've figured out a way just as a society on how to cope and deal and cohabitate in workspaces together. Since then, some of the conversations and visits and activities that we've traveled to, as well as many, many, many Zoom calls, you can see there's definitely a healthy bit of optimism on being able to kick a lot of these delayed activities and efforts off and to keep pushing things forward. And if anything, I think you start to see a little bit more of aggressiveness to go in a little faster because many entities, including ourselves, want to make up for lost time. So we're definitely responding to that pace of increased activity and really wanting to push some timelines and get aggressive with some deployment schedules for sure. And many of our manufacturers are working many long hours, many shifts. In some cases, I have one anecdotally that's working double, triple shifts right now, just trying to meet orders. There's just a lot of demand for orders right now. And I think that's encouraging. I can't think of any one of our manufacturers that we've talked to here in the last few months that haven't expressed some level of just, we are so busy and we cannot keep up with orders. We got so many vehicles that are flying out the door and just so many people wanting to pick up some sophisticated unmanned aircraft. And that's really encouraging for us to hear.
And my final question, Andy, what message would you like to leave regarding UAS repair services?
Largely, I think it's going to mirror what I said on the last interview that we've done together is we're putting vehicles into our airspace system. We're proposing flying them overhead, in a lot of cases carrying packages either commercially or for medical purposes or, whatever the case may be. it's serious business playing in the national airspace system, and we need to make sure that we're building robust vehicles that have many redundancies and safeguards in them, as well as ensuring that we're maintaining and inspecting them properly. That's just good practice as a whole for the whole industry. If we all kind of shepherd this along as responsible kind of groups and entities that want to do the right thing and make sure that we're providing safe and effective services, which we think we're a key enabler of that, I think we'll see this industry grow. But if we lose focus on, ensuring that we're flying aircraft that are safe for our society and we start to have mishaps, then that's where we're going to stifle growth and really start to have a lot of questions about the validity and whether or not we should be doing as much as we are, as fast as we are.
That's it for episode 296 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Andy Osantowske of Robotic Skies. I want to thank Andy for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Robotic Skies or want to connect with Andy, check out the webpage at roboticskies.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.